Good morning. I've been away and so I'm back now. Back and ready to roll. So we're going to start today's prayers with the Tablet of Ahmad. Good morning, Clyde. He is the King, the all-knowing, the wise. Lo, the nightingale of paradise singeth upon the twigs of the tree of eternity with holy and sweet melodies, proclaiming to the sincere ones the glad tidings of the nearness of God, calling the believers in the divine unity to the court of the presence of the generous one, informing the severed ones of the message which hath been revealed by God the King, glorious, the peerless, guiding the lovers to the seat of sanctity and to this resplendent beauty. Verily, this is that most great beauty, foretold in the books of the messengers, through whom truth shall be distinguished from error, and the wisdom of every command shall be tested. Verily, he is the tree of life that bringeth forth the fruits of God, the exalted, the powerful, the great. O Ahmad, bear thou witness that verily he is God, and there is no God but him, the King, the Protector, the incomparable, the omnipotent, and that the one whom he hath sent forth by the name of Ali was the true one from God, to whose commands we are all conforming. Say, O people, be obedient to the ordinances of God which have been enjoined in the Bayan by the glorious, the wise one. Verily, he is the King of the messengers, and his book is the mother book. Did ye but know? Thus doth the nightingale utter his call unto you from this prison. He hath but to deliver this clear message. Whosoever desireth, let him turn aside from this counsel. And whosoever desireth, let him choose the path to his Lord. O people, if ye deny these verses, by what proof have ye believed in God? Produce it, O assemblage of false ones. Nay, by the one in whose hand is my soul, they are not and never shall be able to do this, even should they combine to assist one another. O Ahmad, forget not my bounties while I am absent. Remember my days during thy days, and my distress and banishment in this remote prison. And be thou so steadfast in my love that thy heart shall not waver, even if the swords of the enemies rain blows upon thee, and all the heavens and the earth arise against thee. Be thou as a flame of fire to mine enemies, and a river of life eternal to my loved ones. Be not of those who doubt. And if thou art overtaken by affliction in my path, or degradation for my sake, be not thou troubled thereby. Rely upon God, thy God, and the Lord of thy fathers. For the people are wandering in the paths of delusion, bereft of discernment to see God with their own eyes, or hear his melody with their own ears. Thus have we found them, as thou also dost witness. Thus have their superstitions become veils between them and their own hearts, and kept them from the path of God, the exalted, the great. Be thou assured in thyself that verily he who turns away from this beauty hath also turned away from the messengers of the past, and showeth pride towards God from all eternity to all eternity. Learn well this tablet, O Ahmad. Chant it during thy days, and withhold not thyself therefrom. For verily God hath ordained for the one who chants it the reward of 100 martyrs, and a service in both worlds. These favors have we bestowed upon thee as a bounty on our part, and a mercy from our presence, that thou mayest be of those who are grateful. By God, should one who is in affliction or grief read this tablet with absolute sincerity, God will dispel his sadness, solve his difficulties, and remove his afflictions. Verily, he is the merciful, the compassionate. Praise be to God, the Lord of all the worlds. Good morning, everybody. Hello, Nick. If anybody has any comments or questions, please type them into the comments section so we can address them. Excuse me for a second. It's really great to see you. Okay, let's start reading from some of these other writings here. Here's a very challenging couple of paragraphs by Bahá'u'lláh, which I will try to talk about a little bit in case it's hard to understand. The first duty prescribed by God for his servants is the recognition of him who is the day spring of his revelation and the fountain of his laws, who representeth the Godhead in both the kingdom of his cause and the world of creation. Whoso achieveth this duty hath attained unto all good, and whoso is deprived thereof hath gone astray, though he be the author of every righteous deed. It behoveth everyone who reacheth this most sublime station, this summit of transcendent glory, to observe every ordinance of him who is the desire of the world. These twin duties are inseparable. Neither is acceptable without the other. Thus hath it been decreed by him who is the source of divine inspiration. So, again, this is a very challenging paragraph. And let's take it apart a sentence at a time. The first duty prescribed by God for his servants is the recognition of him who is the day spring of his revelation. That would mean like the source of God's revelation, and the fountain of his laws, who representeth the Godhead in both the kingdom of his cause and the world of creation. Okay, so who is this person? Him who is the day spring of his revelation and the fountain of his laws. Well, from the Baha'i perspective, Baha'u'lláh is talking about the messenger of God that comes from age to age to enlighten humanity. Whether it be Jesus or Moses or White Buffalo Calf Woman or Quetzalcoatl or Muhammad or Buddha, etc. Because as Baha'is, we recognize that God has sent divine messengers from age to every people in the world so that no one would be left without guidance. But we also understand that from age to age, God renews the message and gives humanity more understanding and more light while reiterating the same basic teachings and abrogating some of the social laws that are no longer relevant for the age in which the new manifestation appears. So what Baha'u'lláh is saying here, if I may, and I welcome all other interpretations, we can talk about them. What he's saying is that in every age, it's important to recognize who is that person, who is the source of God's guidance for the day in which we live. And then once we recognize that person, he says, it behoveth everyone who reacheth this most sublime station. The most sublime station is to be able to recognize God's messenger for the day in which you live. This summit of transcendent glory, to observe every ordinance of him who is the desire of the world. Now he's saying, not only is it important to recognize the messenger of God for this day, but we have to also obey him. And then he says, these twin duties are inseparable, neither is acceptable without the other. Thus hath it been decreed by him who is the source of divine inspiration. So we have to recognize and we have to obey. And I think this is what Jesus was saying. And of course, there's always been this argument in Christianity between, is it enough to just recognize Jesus, or do we have to do what he says as well as recognize him? And some people say, well, all you have to do is recognize him. But Jesus himself says that, what does he say? Faith without deeds is dead. Yeah. Faith without deeds is dead. Correct me if if I don't have the exact quote, but that's basically what he says. Some people say all you have to have is faith, but Jesus says faith without deeds is dead. So we have to do both, and Baha'u'lláh is clarifying that so that he'll emphasize that again. Here he goes. In the next paragraph he says, and by the way, these two paragraphs are from the most holy book, or the Kitáb-Í-Iqán, the book of laws, which Baha'u'lláh revealed before he died. And he says, they whom God hath endued with insight will readily recognize that the precepts laid down by God constitute the highest means for the maintenance of order in the world and the security of its peoples. So now he's saying, it's really important to observe these laws because these laws are the highest means for the maintenance of order in the world and the security of the world's peoples. He that turneth away from them is accounted among the abject and the foolish. So don't be foolish. Look at these laws with the eye of justice and take them in and consider them deeply. And then he says, we verily have commanded you to refuse the dictates of your evil passions and corrupt desires. Refuse the dictates of your evil passions and corrupt desires. So just because we want something doesn't mean it's good. It doesn't mean it's good for us. It doesn't mean it's good for humanity. And that is where we begin to strengthen our will, by refusing the dictates of our evil passions and corrupt desires. And let's see what he says. And not to transgress the bounds which the pen of the Most High hath fixed. So he's saying, the messenger of God brings these laws. Don't cross them, for these are the breath of life. The breath of life unto all created things. He's saying that his laws are the breath of life to all created things. The seas of divine wisdom and divine utterance have risen under the breath of the breeze of the All-Merciful. So God has inspired the messenger of God to bring these laws, to bring wisdom and divine utterance. Don't transgress that. Hasten to drink your fill, O men of understanding. It's beautiful. Okay, now we're going to go on here. Just a second. Okay. Well, let's do some more prayers. So, if you tell me where you're watching from, I will say, I usually say the tablet of visitation for the northeastern states, which was revealed by Abdu'l-Baha after he came to this country. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to say that tablet of visitation. But if you don't live in the Northeast, and you would like me to say the tablet of visitation for where you live, tell me where you live, and I will say it as well. And just type it into your comments bar. But right now, I'm going to say the tablet of visitation for the northeastern states. O thou kind Lord, Praise be unto thee that thou hast shown us the highway of guidance. Open the doors of the kingdom and manifested thyself through the Sun of reality. To the blind thou hast given sight, to the deaf thou hast granted hearing. Thou hast resuscitated the dead, thou hast enriched the poor. Thou hast shown the way to those who have gone astray. Thou hast led those with parched lips to the fountain of guidance. Thou hast suffered the thirsty fish to reach the ocean of reality, and thou hast invited the wandering birds to the rose garden of grace. O thou Almighty, we are thy servants and thy poor ones. We are remote and yearn for thy presence, are athirst for the water of thy fountain, are ill, longing for thy healing. We are walking in thy path and have no aim or hope, save the diffusion of thy fragrance, so that all souls may raise the cry of, O God, guide us to the straight path. May their eyes be opened to behold the light. May they be freed from the darkness of ignorance. May they gather around the lamp of thy guidance. May every portionless one receive a share. May the deprived become the confidants of thy mysteries. O Almighty, look upon us with the glance of mercifulness. Grant us heavenly confirmation. Bestow upon us the breath of the Holy Spirit, so that we may be assisted in thy service, like unto brilliant stars, shine in these regions with the light of thy guidance. Verily thou art the powerful, the mighty, the wise, and the seeing. All right. Let's look at the Book of Certitude. Nick, are you still there? Tell me where you are, if you're still there. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go back to the Book of Certitude, page 65. Okay. Oh, These are not the right glasses. They're in the oh. They're the wrong glasses in the right case. These are the right glasses. Baha'u'lláh says, we have digressed from the purpose of our argument. Although whatsoever is mentioned serveth only to confirm our purpose. By God, however great our desire to be brief, yet we feel we cannot restrain our pen. That happens to me all the time. Notwithstanding all that we have mentioned, how innumerable are the pearls which have remained unpierced in the shell of our heart. How many the houris of inner meaning. I think houris are like angels or spirits. How many the houris of inner meaning that are as yet concealed within the chambers of divine wisdom. None hath yet approached them. Houris whom no man nor spirit hath touched before. That's a quote from the Quran. And it's an allusion to inner meanings that haven't been apprehended. Notwithstanding all that hath been said, it seemeth as if not one letter of our purpose hath been uttered, nor a single sign divulged concerning our object. When will a faithful seeker be found, who will don the garb of pilgrimage, attain the Kitáb-Í of the heart's desire, and without ear or tongue discover the mysteries of divine utterance? So he says, when will a faithful seeker be found who will don the garb of pilgrimage? And I think he means inner pilgrimage to the throne of God within our hearts. Attain the Kitáb-Í of the heart's desire. The Kitáb-Í is the place toward which the faithful turn in prayer. So at one time it was Jerusalem, and then it was Mecca, and today it's Akka, where Baha'u'lláh is buried. He's saying, when will a faithful seeker be found who will go inside and pray with all sincerity and seek and find the truth for today and recognize Baha'u'lláh and meditate deeply on his words to understand their inner meanings. By these luminous, these conclusive and lucid statements, the meaning of heaven in the aforementioned verse hath thus been made clear and evident. So, he had talked about that before. Let's see if I can find it. Oh yes, it was in this paragraph. And he's saying, the word heaven in the holy writings refers to many things. And here he said, the heaven of command, the heaven of will, the heaven of the divine purpose, the heaven of divine knowledge, the heaven of certitude, the heaven of utterance, the heaven of revelation, the heaven of concealment. So here, back on page 63, he said, in every instance, he's given the term heaven a special meaning, the significance of which is revealed to none save those that have been initiated into the divine mysteries. Initiated into the divine mysteries. So how do you become initiated into the divine mysteries and have drunk from the chalice of immortal life? Well, I think that's what we've been talking about. The first step is search. The second step is recognition of the messenger of God for the day in which we live. And then the third step is to study what he teaches and meditate on it until the meanings become clear. So let's go back to page 66. He says, and now regarding his words, now he's going to talk about a prophecy in the Bible. And now regarding his words that the Son of Man shall come in the clouds of heaven. Well, he talked about some of the meanings of the word heaven. And now he's going to talk about the clouds. What does it mean that Jesus will return in the clouds of heaven? This is very, very important. By term clouds is meant those things that are contrary to the ways and desires of men. So the messenger of God is going to come into the world. The return of the Spirit of Christ is come into the world, bringing laws and teachings that might not be what we want. Because we want to be able to do whatever we want to do, and we want it to be fine. We want it to be okay. We don't want to have to be obedient. We don't want to have to give up things that we don't want to give up. These things are the clouds that keep us from recognizing. Even as he hath revealed in the verse already quoted, as oft as an apostle cometh unto you with that which your souls desire not, ye swell with pride, accusing some of being impostors and slaying others. And that is a quote from Muhammad in the Quran. Just a second, please. Bear with me. These clouds signify, in one sense, the annulment of laws, the abrogation of former dispensations, the repeal of rituals and customs current amongst men, the exalting of the illiterate faithful above the learned opposers of the faith. So he's saying that one of the ways in which the messenger of God is hidden from the eyes of certain people is because, when the messenger of God comes, the laws of the former dispensation are annulled. So when Jesus came, the laws of Judaism were annulled, and he established new laws. When Muhammad came, the laws of Christianity were annulled, and new laws were established. And now that Bahá'u'lláh has come, he has annulled the laws of all the former dispensations, including Islam, and established the Baha'i laws, which are the laws for today. And he says, the exalting of the illiterate faithful above the learned opposers of the faith. So let's look at the time of Jesus. He's saying that the fisherman was exalted above the most learned leaders of Judaism. And it's so in every dispensation. When the new messenger comes, the illiterate faithful are more learned in the path of God than those who have memorized entire sacred books. Now he's going to talk about another meaning. In another sense, they mean the appearance of that immortal beauty in the image of mortal man. With such human limitations as eating and drinking, poverty and riches, glory and abasement, sleeping and waking, and such other things as cast doubt in the minds of men and cause them to turn away. In other words, the messenger of God doesn't appear as a superhero. The messenger of God appears as a human being with all the human needs that humans have. And that's another cloud that keeps people from recognizing. So, for instance, let me give you an example. There's a prophecy in Christianity that Jesus is going to come down on the clouds and the whole world is going to recognize him and bow down to him. So some people expect Jesus to appear in the same body with the same personality. He's going to come down on a cloud, on a literal cloud, and everybody's going to bow down to that. Well, that's not human, is it? That's something else. Baha'u'lláh is saying the messenger of God doesn't appear that way. He appears like a regular man. And that becomes a reason for people to turn away because they expect something else. Let's go on. These are the clouds that cause the heavens of the knowledge and understanding of all that dwell on earth to be cloven asunder. So, if you have believed with all your heart in a religion of the past since the day you were born, and then you discover that a new messenger of God has appeared and has said, these things are abrogated, I bring new laws, the heaven of your faith has now been torn apart by this. Even as the clouds prevent the eyes of men from beholding the sun, so do these things hinder the souls of men from recognizing the light of the divine luminary. The divine luminary being the messenger of God for the age in which you live. To this beareth witness that which hath proceeded out of the mouth of the unbelievers. And now he's going to quote from the Quran again. And they have said, what manner of apostle is this? He eateth food and walketh the streets. Unless an angel be sent down and take part in his warnings, we will not believe. So that's what the deniers of the revelation of Muhammad said in his time. Other prophets similarly, by the way, let me just explain that when Baha'u'lláh uses the word prophets, he explains that there are two meanings for the word prophet. One is with a capital P and one is with a small p, usually the way it's translated. But he talks about the prophets, like the prophets from the Old Testament, those great men who have appeared in the world, and whose lives changed the world, but they're under the teachings of a manifestation. So, for instance, you could say that Gandhi could fall into this category, but Gandhi was a Hindu. You know, Gandhi he didn't reveal his own revelation. He was a Hindu. Martin Luther King was a Christian. He did wonderful things, but he was a Christian. He followed Jesus. The prophets in the Old Testament, Ezekiel, Isaiah, Daniel, Jeremiah, they were also, they followed Moses. But then you have Jesus and Moses and Muhammad and Baha'u'lláh and the Buddha and, as I mentioned before, a white buffalo calf woman, etc. And they reveal their own set of teachings. They reveal their own books or their own set of teachings which are carried down through oral tradition. And these are called manifestations of God. They have a different station because they don't have the, they have something beyond what humans have. So humans have everything that animals have, everything that plants have, everything that minerals have, but animals don't have what humans have. Well, humans don't have what manifestations of God have. Manifestations of God have divine knowledge. Manifestations of God are morally and spiritually perfect. They have something that we don't have. That's why we follow them, because we can trust them not to make mistakes. That's the whole point. Other prophets similarly have been subject to poverty and afflictions, to hunger, and to the ills and chances of this world. As these holy persons were subject to such needs and wants, the people were consequently lost in the wilds of misgivings and doubts, and were afflicted with bewilderment and perplexity. How, they wondered, could such a person be sent down from God, assert his ascendancy over all the peoples and kindreds of the earth, and claim himself to be the goal of all creation, even as he hath said, but for thee I would not have created all that are in heaven and on earth. I guess it doesn't, that must be a quote from the Quran also. And yet be subject to such trivial things. So he's saying, how could these people be perfect messengers of God and be subjected to these limitations, these human limitations? You must undoubtedly have been informed of the tribulations, the poverty, the ills, and the degradation that have befallen every prophet of God and his companions. You must have heard how the heads of their followers were sent as presents unto different cities, how grievously they were hindered from that whereunto they were commanded. Each and every one of them fell a prey to the hands of the enemies of his cause, and had to suffer whatsoever they decreed. Okay, I'm going to keep going here. It is evident that the changes brought about in every dispensation, that means every time a new messenger of God comes, constitute the dark clouds that intervene between the eye of man's understanding and the divine luminary, in other words, the divine teacher, which shineth forth from the dayspring of the divine essence. So that's saying when every new messenger comes, there are changes in the laws and teachings that he brings from God. It says, the divine luminary, that's the divine teacher, which shineth forth from the dayspring of the divine essence. In other words, the divine teacher shines and is divine because of the power that comes from God. It's the power that comes from God that animates that divine teacher. Consider how men for generations have been blindly imitating their fathers and have been trained according to such ways and manners that have been laid down by the dictates of their faith for hundreds and hundreds of years. People have been blindly following their ancestors. Were these men, therefore, to discover suddenly that a man who had been living in their midst, who with respect to every human limitation had been their equal, had risen to abolish every established principle imposed by their faith, principles by which for centuries they have been disciplined, and every opposer and denier of which they have come to regard as infidel, profligate, and wicked, they would of a certainty be veiled and hindered from acknowledging his truth. Okay, so this is saying, when people have been following the religions of their forebears for hundreds of years, and then all of a sudden somebody rises up, a human being like themselves, who lives during the day that they live, and abolishes everything they've been following for generations upon generations upon generations, where everybody who went against these laws were considered infidel and terrible. It's going to be darn hard for these people to acknowledge the truth of this messenger. And here's where Baha'u'lláh is saying, such things are as clouds that veil the eyes of those whose inner being hath not tasted the salsabil of detachment, nor drunk from the cawthor of the knowledge of God. So he's saying these things are the reason why people can't recognize the messenger. These are examples of the reason. Unless inwardly they are searching. Unless they're searching inwardly, unless they're praying and meditating and searching for the divine messenger inwardly. And that, and the salsabil, I forget what the word salsabil means. If anybody on here knows, please type it into your comments bar. But through this process of the search for truth, we detach ourselves. We detach ourselves from what we think we know. We detach ourselves from what we want, from our desires, from our opinions. And we search with our whole hearts for truth. And that's what he's saying. Drunk from the cawthor, the fountain of the knowledge of God. Just a second, please. Just a second, please. Okay. All right, let's go. Let's go on. Such men, when acquainted with these circumstances, become so veiled that without the least question, they pronounce the manifestation of God as an infidel and sentence him to death. You must have heard of such things taking place all down the ages, and are now observing them in these days, the days of Bahá'u'lláh. And now he says, it behooves us, therefore, to make the utmost endeavor that by God's invisible assistance, these dark veils, these clouds of heaven-sent trials, may not hinder us from beholding the beauty of his shining countenance. That means face. And that we may recognize him only by his own self. And should we ask for a testimony of his truth, we should content ourselves with one, and only one, that thereby we may attain unto him who is the fountainhead of infinite grace, and in whose presence all the world's abundance fadeth into nothingness, saying, in the presence of the manifestation of God, everything in the world becomes a handful of dust, that we may cease to cavil at him, argue, and find fault every day, and to cleave unto our own idle fancy, so we can recognize him and stop denying. Okay. That's great, Linda. That's really great to hear. I'm trying to broadcast every day, mostly in the evening, but sometimes I can't do it in the evening. I certainly may miss sometimes, but I'm trying to be more consistent. I'm trying to be more consistent. So it's really wonderful, Linda, that to have you on board, because I know you've been struggling for a long time to find assurance, and I honor that. And I'm so grateful to everybody who joins me. For so long I've longed to share my morning devotions, and for many years, because I spend much time in prayer, and I've longed to share this for so long, and the internet has given me a way that I can share it and I can be with people, and it means a lot to me. And as I always say, if anybody wants to offer a prayer, I can bring you on camera, or if you want to ask a question or make a comment, because I'm only sharing, the light that's been shown into my heart. But we know, because Baha'u'lláh says, that there's infinite meanings for every word that he has revealed. And that's why I always invite people to share their thoughts. So I think I will end with a prayer. I'll end with a prayer by Abdu'l-Baha. This prayer, this is what Abdu'l-Baha said about it. He said, "Whoso reciteth this prayer with loneliness and fervor, lowliness, will bring gladness and joy to the heart of the servant. It will be even as meeting him face to face." Okay, this prayer is from Baha'i prayers. And Linda, what I've been reading from is the Kitáb-Í-Iqán, the Book of Certitude, which can be ordered from the Baha'i bookstore. And I'm going through that systematically, and we're studying that book. And that's the book in which Baha'u'lláh talks about the spiritual meanings of many of the prophecies of the ancient religions. It talks about the link between all the religions. And it's a very special book that has helped me to be able to read sacred books and see what the meanings are sometimes, like looking into a clear pond and seeing the stones at the bottom. It's beautiful. This prayer that I'm about to say was revealed by Abdu'l-Baha, and it is read at his shrine and used in private prayer. So here is the prayer. He is the all-glorious. O God, my God, lowly and tearful, I raise my suppliant hands to thee and cover my face in the dust of that threshold of thine, exalted above the knowledge of the learned, and the praise of all that glorify thee. Graciously look upon thy servant, humble and lowly at thy door, with the glances of the eye of thy mercy, and immerse him in the ocean of thine eternal grace. Lord, he is a poor and lowly servant of thine, enthralled and imploring thee, captive in thy hand, praying fervently to thee, trusting in thee, in tears before thy face, calling to thee and beseeching thee, saying, O Lord my God, give me thy grace to serve thy loved ones. Strengthen me in my servitude to thee. Illumine my brow with the light of adoration in thy court of holiness and of prayer to thy kingdom of grandeur. O Lord, help me to be selfless at the heavenly entrance of thy gate, and aid me to be detached from all things within thy holy precincts. Lord, give me to drink from the chalice of selflessness. With its robe clothe me, and in its ocean immerse me. Make me as dust in the pathway of thy loved ones, and grant that I may offer up my soul, ennobled by the footsteps for the earth, ennobled by the footsteps of thy chosen ones in thy path, O Lord of glory in the highest. With this prayer doth thy servant call thee at dawntide and in the night season. Fulfill his heart's desire, O Lord. Illumine his heart, gladden his bosom, kindle his light, that he may serve thy cause and thy servants. Thou art the bestower, the pitiful, the all-bountiful, the gracious, the merciful.